October 30th, 2014, from Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte, North Carolina. It was Thursday Night Football featuring the New Orleans Saints and the Carolina Panthers as these two NFC South Division rivals faced off. And New Orleans won the toss and they elected to receive, so they got the ball first. They started off on their own 20. They made it across midfield and into Carolina territory and all the way down into the red zone. It was 3rd and 6 from the Carolina 13. Drew Brees dropped back to pass and he was intercepted by Edwards. So the Panthers would take over on their own 27 and they would end up reaching midfield and even getting into New Orleans territory, but then their drive stalled on the New Orleans 39 and they would be forced to punt the ball. So now New Orleans would take over with about 7 minutes left in the first quarter. They would have the ball on their own 10-yard line, and then on 3rd and 10 from the New Orleans 29, Drew Brees dropped back to pass and he hit Marquise Colston for a 22-yard reception that brought the ball to midfield. And then 2 plays later, it was 1st and 10 from the Carolina 39. Drew Brees dropped back and he was sacked as he was dropped by Johnson. Johnson forced the fumble and it was recovered by Addison as the Carolina Panthers now took over with about 5 minutes left in the first quarter and they had the ball on their own 47. They would end up punting it though 6 plays later as they got into New Orleans territory. But now New Orleans had the ball on their own 7-yard line as they were backed up against their own end zone. There's about 2.5 minutes left in the first. New Orleans would actually bring an end to the first quarter with the ball on their own 18-yard line, and after one it was still knotted up at a goose egg. So to start things off in the second quarter, it was 4th and 9 on the 18 for the Saints and they punted the ball to the Panthers. So now the Panthers took over on their own 30-yard line and they ended up reaching midfield and they got into the New Orleans Saints territory. But then on 2nd and 2 from the New Orleans 41, Cam Newton dropped back to pass and he was intercepted by White. And so now New Orleans would take back over, but they went 3 and out, and so the Panthers would get the ball back with less than 9 minutes left in the first half. 4 plays later though, they were punting the ball back to the Saints, who then would punt the ball 4 plays later as well. So now the Carolina Panthers took over with less than 4.5 minutes left in the second quarter. They were backed up against their own end zone as they were on their own 7-yard line. And then on 3rd and 9 from the Carolina 8-yard line, Cam Newton dropped back and he was sacked by Galette. Galette forced the fumble and it was recovered by Lofton. So now the Saints took over on the Carolina 4-yard line, and after a 1-yard run by Ingram on 2nd and goal from the 3, Mark Ingram punched it in from 3 yards out, and that scored the game's first points as it was now 7-0 Saints over the Panthers, as neither team had scored until deep into the second quarter. So now with about 2.5 minutes left before halftime, the Panthers would take over on their own 20. Cam Newton was sacked by Cameron Jordan for a 9-yard loss that would make it 2nd and 19. And then after only getting 6 yards on a 3rd and 19, on 4th and 13, they would punt the ball, so they went 3 and out. So now the Saints got the ball back with less than 2 minutes left in the second quarter. They had it on their own 15-yard line, and on 3rd and 10 from the New Orleans 15, Drew Brees dropped back to pass. He hit Stills for a 17-yard reception, and that would bring the ball out to the 41. The Saints would then fumble on the next play, but they would end up recovering the ball as it went out of bounds. So they fumbled out of bounds, but they picked up 9 yards on the pass from Brees to Stills. And so now it was 2nd and 1 from the 41. Brees then hit Jimmy Graham for 5 yards, and that brought to the 46. Brees then hit Colston for 8 yards. That brought across midfield to the Carolina 46. And then Brees hit Galette for a 20-yard reception that brought the ball to the Carolina 26 with about 30 seconds left before halftime. Drew Brees got sacked on the next play by Horton, and he fumbled, but he recovered the ball, and so then he ended up spiking the ball, and so now it was 3rd and 17 from the Carolina 33. Drew Brees dropped back, and he looked for Meacham. It was incomplete, but it was a pass interference call against Kason, so now it would be 1st and goal on the 1-yard line. And then Drew Brees hit Jimmy Graham for the touchdown, and it was 14-0, New Orleans over Carolina. And with just seconds left before halftime, And that would be the score at intermission. So after the first half, it was 14 for New Orleans, 0 for Carolina. The Panthers ended up taking over to start off the second half, and they had the ball on their own 19. Cam Newton then dropped back, and he hit Williams, and he ran for 30 yards off the pass, and that brought it out to midfield at the 49. They got into New Orleans territory as they started driving. They were able to pick up first downs. They got into the red zone. It was first and goal on the 10, and after an incomplete pass, a pair of incomplete passes, we had 3rd and 10, and Cam Newton took it himself, ran it in for 10 yards in the touchdown, and it was now 14-7 as the Panthers got on the board with their first possession of the second half. So now it was a one-touchdown game, and the Saints would take over with a little over 10 minutes left in the third. They had the ball on their own 20. They would bring it to midfield and into Panthers territory. They got down into the red zone. It was 1st and 10 on the Carolina 15, and Ingram ran for 12 yards to make it 1st and goal on the 3. A few plays later, though, they would be forced to go for it on 4th and goal from the 1, as they had yet to get into the end zone, and Drew Brees, with the quarterback sneak, takes it in for the touchdown and extends the Saints' lead back to 2 touchdowns, with the score now 21-7, Saints over the Panthers. So now Carolina would take over with about 4 minutes left in the third quarter. They're on their own 18, and they started to gain some ground, but then their drive stalled on their 33, and they ended up having to punt the ball back to New Orleans. New Orleans went 3 and out as the Panthers defense came up big on that stance, and they would take over with a little less than a minute left in the third quarter. They had the ball on their own 32. Cam Newton dropped back to pass, and he found Jericho Cotchery for a 47-yard reception, and that brought the ball to the New Orleans 21. Williams then ran for 6 yards, and the third quarter came to a close with the score New Orleans 21, Carolina 7. So to start things off in the fourth quarter, the Panthers had the ball on the Saints 15. Their drive would end up stalling. They did get to 1st and goal on the 6, but then Cam Newton ended up losing 8 yards. And so then after a couple incomplete passes, Gano came out to attempt a 31-yard field goal. It was up, it was good, and the score was now 21-10 as the Saints had the lead by 11 as the Panthers chipped away a little bit. But the Saints now would take over with 13 minutes left in this game. The ball on their own 20. Drew Brees was then sacked on 1st down for a 6-yard loss by Edwards, but then on 2nd and 16, Drew Brees found Jimmy Graham for a 27-yard pass that would give them a 1st down on the 41. A few plays later, they got into Carolina territory with 2nd and 7 on the Carolina 44. Drew Brees dropped back, and he found Robert Meacham for a 25-yard reception that brought the ball to the red zone on the Carolina 19. Then, a few plays later, it was 3rd and 3 from the Carolina 12. Drew Brees dropped back to pass, and he found Jimmy Graham for a 6-yard reception, which picked up the 1st down and made it 1st and goal on the 6. A couple plays after that, it was 3rd and goal from the 3, and Mark Ingram punched it in as he gave New Orleans the 28-10 lead as they were now up by 18 points. So Ingram with the touchdown. So now the Panthers got the ball with about 5.5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. They had it on their own 28, and they would go 3 and out as the Saints defense came up clutch and put the nails in the coffin as they gave their offense the ball back with about 3.5 minutes left, and the offense just ran out the clock as Ingram just kept pounding the ball and picked up the necessary 1st downs to allow Drew Brees to take 2 knees. And this game came to a close with the final score, New Orleans 28, Carolina 10. And with the victory, the Saints are now at 500 with a record of 4-4, and this is their first road win. The Panthers are now 3-5-1 as they now fall to 2-3 at home. And in this game, Drew Brees was 24 for 34 with 297 passing yards. He had 1 touchdown and 1 interception. He also had 2 yards off of 4 carries and a touchdown on the ground. Cam Newton was 10 for 28 with 151 passing yards, and he had 1 interception. He also ran for 43 yards off of 7 carries and had a touchdown on the ground. The leading rusher in this game was Mark Ingram with 100 yards off of 30 carries. He had 2 touchdowns rushing. John Stewart led the Panthers with 46 yards off of 8 carries. So Newton was just 3 yards shy of being the Panthers' leading rusher in the game. The leading receiver was Jimmy Graham of the New Orleans Saints. He had 7 receptions for 83 yards and a touchdown. It's the only touchdown caught by a Saint, and the only touchdown caught in the game. And on defense, the leading tackler was a tie, as both teams had a tackler with 8 tackles. We had Luke Kuechly of the Carolina Panthers had 8 tackles, and Rafael Bush of the New Orleans Saints had 8 tackles. And in the game, both teams had 4 sacks. Galette had 2 sacks. He was the only person with multiple sacks in the game, Junior Galette. And then Cameron Jordan and Akeem Hicks both had 1 sack for the Saints. And then for the Panthers, Colin Jones, and then Dewan Edwards, Wes Horton, and Charles Johnson each had 1 sack apiece. And for interceptions, each team had 1 pick. And for the Saints, it was Corey White. And for the Panthers, it was Dewan Edwards. So Dewan Edwards got a sack and he had the pick. It was in a losing effort, though, as New Orleans wins this division rivalry game from the NFC South. And the final score, New Orleans 28, Carolina 10.